Breaking news. The city of Wuhan has gone into full quarantine. A city of 11 million people has completely locked down after authorities say the virus has mutated. This is starting to look like a Resident Evil movie, or perhaps a movie I Am Legend. Anything is possible in the very near future as they're working on immunotherapies and the like. In any case, this is big news, to say the least. The city of 11 million people has been locked down, and of course, the video guy on live television just can't do his job. But authorities are taking this very seriously, to say the least, locking down the entire city. And, you have to give them credit for being able to trace this right down to this particular city and even the seafood market where this supposedly has originated. Of course, this virus was first picked up on the radar about 3 weeks ago. And so conceivably the first wave, has begun worldwide. However, moves like this will certainly curtail, the virus reservoir, as well as the, infinite spread of this virus. We'll have to see, if it burns out or if it becomes like the movie Outbreak and they need to nuke an entire city. But right now, ladies and gentlemen, the mega city of Wuhan has been quarantined, locked down. 11 million people cannot leave. Videos right now surfacing on the internet show, streets, highways, every exit being locked down, public transport being locked down, train, airports, and the like. And of course, countries that are receiving tourists or, business people and the like from that part of the world are now implementing additional screening, ladies and gentlemen. So this is rather interesting, just seeing how they react to the outbreak. And there's a lot to be said about viruses and how they work and the very nature of our existence. When you look at DNA, when you look at how viruses work, it's, obviously the product of nanotechnology, ladies and gentlemen. And, it truly is something to marvel at. However, we'll get back into that. We'll get into the big breaking news. 11 million people quarantined right now, probably the largest quarantine in world history when you think about it. And they're just spraying everything down. They're saying that the virus has mutated. And for them to take a step like this, it kind of makes you wonder, what is going on. Now, they're obviously taking this very seriously. They've had their fair share of outbreaks out there. Most people remember the Sars virus and the like. And that killed, quite a few people. I think 800 or 1,000 people, to say the least, and infected many others. It had about a 10% kill rate, not quite as effective as Ebola, but, the flu nonetheless. And, the reason that people die because of the flu, it's because of pneumonia. Most flu-related deaths lead that way, a massive infection of the respiratory system, to say the least. And let's see if we can bring up some more interesting videos. But right now, the city is locked down, being fumigated, being sprayed. And, the world is fearing the worst, an outbreak. And they should be fearing the other outbreak right now, the demonic outbreak. You can see it on television. Pay attention to these people's foreheads and their demeanors. They look demonic. What are the chances of that? These people don't look like reptiles or gremlins. They look like the devil, ladies and gentlemen, something that people have been warning you about for thousands of years. It's right there in the Bible. Be sure to check that out. But right now, big breaking news. 11 million people have been locked down, quarantined, as authorities say this virus has mutated into something worse. Right now, the kill rate looks at about 3%, Will it go up? Will the numbers go up? Time will tell. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there, very suspicious that are thinking, well, maybe this is just a way to sell, the flu vaccine. And most of the time, the flu vaccine is only about, 20%, 10% effective. And seems like it might just kind of give people a false sense of security more than anything else. We're seeing the numbers of flu deaths rise every year, even though there are vaccines, and people are using hand sanitizer and the like. And in 2017, 2018, 80,000 people died. Huge numbers, something that nobody's ever seen before, pretty much in recent history. And, this is a very serious killer now, the flu. Why is that, ladies and gentlemen? And we've been talking about the problems with these death towers, these cell towers that are out there that actually wreak havoc on the immune system. And they make the common cold a giant killer, ladies and gentlemen. And, this is just part of the problem, to say the least. But these death towers, especially the new and improved 5G death towers, will phaser beam you like the Starship Enterprise and deliver a dose that you won't soon forget. The Wuhan supervirus is raging like wildfire in these quarantine zones. According to new video, people are dropping like flies. Ladies and gentlemen, people are stacking up in these hospitals, one right next to the other. And we've got video of the doctors and nurses out there freaking out. It's obviously worse than people can imagine. The situation is like something that nobody has ever seen. Entire cities have been locked down, quarantined. Millions and millions of people are stranded in these super cities, if you will. And people are just dropping like flies in broad daylight right there on the street. We've got multiple videos. It's like a horror movie out there, ladies and gentlemen. And this virus is 3 weeks ahead of everybody else in terms of spreading through the major networks, the airport hubs and the like. And we're getting reports of new cases around the world right now. And 2 in America, at least half a dozen up in the UK, perhaps more. And people are just, starting to come down with it, starting to show symptoms. They say there's a 5-day incubation period. They say the virus has mutated and not only kills through pneumonia, but through organ failure as well. What is this virus, ladies and gentlemen? What is this Wuhan virus that is spreading without borders right now? And what we can say by looking at, some of the background information is that this thing erupted right in the middle of the country in a major hub and has the potential of affecting, billions of people in a matter of no time. And while the kill rate right now appears to be around 3%, there's no telling what it will become in the wild. Now, some people are saying, some researchers are saying that this came from snakes or bats or some kind of food. Seafood was the first report. But looking at the way, everybody is stacked and packed in these cities out there, it's like nothing you've ever seen before. And we've got some videos of Wuhan in broad daylight here. But this is actually Wuhan. And the buildings here are like nothing else. There are no homes. It's all these stack and pack Agenda 21 residences. And while it's efficient and effective for shuttling people to work, this is a disaster when it comes to virus pools. And with this many people stacked together, the mutations can happen all by themselves. And there's no need for something exotic like a bat or a snake. I mean, this just might be their new version of the cold, ladies and gentlemen. And to see these viruses attack is something else. To see what they're made of, how they operate, it's like watching micro machines. It's like watching nanotechnology invade. And of course, these viruses are evolving, with time, to say the least, as well as all of the other things that might be coming out of a laboratory right now. But the way this was strategically dropped in the middle of the country, we highly suspect that this might be an engineered virus meant to wreak havoc on many, many people out there. Of course, everybody's familiar with the Georgia Guidestones, the Agenda 21. They want to eliminate as many people as they can out there, so people should beware of that possibility. I mean, you look at these people on TV, they look diabolical, to say the least. Many people have been watching, the politics, the impeachment, and the like. And, I mean, these people look like they're straight from hell, ladies and gentlemen. And it's not just the politicians. It's basically all of your actors and actresses and news people and the like. They're all exhibiting this demonic morphology. And this is another virus that we're following quite closely, the DEV666 virus. Ladies and gentlemen, you might laugh at that, but it's no laughing matter. And if you pay attention to the television, it's 24/7 product placement for the devil, for anti-Christian ideology. If you're just joining us, the Wuhan supervirus is raging like wildfire in these quarantine zones. We've got video of people just dropping in broad daylight, and numerous videos of ambulances picking up people. There's a huge panic at the hospital. You think that's the last place anybody would want to be, but they're just lining up to get tested for a flu-like virus. And, I mean, this is a recipe for disaster. And while the idea of shutting down this virus pool or these cities that are at the epicenter of the outbreak, what's happening right now in these cities is anybody's guess, and it looks like panic is starting to set in. The shelves, pretty much have been cleared out of fresh produce and the like. And, what are these people going to do? Who wants to go to work? Who wants to go to the mall? And, it's basically right now a black hole of information as far as what's going on out there with this virus. And while people were probably laughing at it a couple of days ago, when they locked down a city like Wuhan, which is like New York, London. Imagine you wake up in the morning on CNN, New York has been quarantined, people cannot leave the island. That's like, the movie I Am Legend. And of course, with CRISPR immunotherapy technologies and research being implemented out there, who knows when we'll have a zombie virus released into the wild. That's anybody's guess. Want to give a big shout out to everybody in the audience out there. We're live on the ScrewTube right now. Want to say hi to Mike and Slipdragon, AJ out there, Nick, Deborah, Linda J, Aaron, Brian, Sally, and the like. Chris, Shaka Khan, Jay Hart. How's everybody doing out there? And so, there's massive censorship everywhere these days. It's become the new norm. It's become standard operating procedure. There's really no telling, what's going on. And, as far as trying to report on this issue, good luck, ladies and gentlemen. Most of it will be curated, but the world panics after the Wuhan supervirus escapes a biosafety level 4 lab, according to experts. Ladies and gentlemen, the situation is like nothing no one has ever seen before. And we're getting reports of roads not just being closed, but actually being sabotaged, destroyed, buried, cut off. I mean, these people are being cut off from the rest of the world, to say the least. And the footage is like nothing anyone has ever seen before. Dead bodies are piling up in the hospitals. We're getting reports of 100,000 people infected in Wuhan already. This is coming from medical staff that are chatting on Weibo, their version of Twitter and the like, and we've been able to kind of do some translations to see what they're actually talking about on the other side of the fence, if you will. And it's worse than you can possibly imagine, and they're all screaming like massive cover-up. Again, this virus has had 3 weeks to spread its legs, and now we're getting confirmed reports all around the world. You're going to hear about it more in the next 48 hours. They're not able to contain the issue, and in fact, they're starting to basically build a trench around this entire province. And the situation is starting to look like Resident Evil, ladies and gentlemen. And many, many videos of people just keeling over. You know, this isn't the normal flu. Now, getting to, you know, the big angle of this story, is this some kind of weaponized strain? Did something go wrong in the laboratory? Those are the news reports that are kind of surfacing today. You can imagine just about any scenario, some kind of lab worker getting super emotional, taking his revenge on the world. Anything's possible. You know, we were talking about the location. You know, location is what they say out there. But we were talking about the location of this particular situation. And it was like right in the center of the country. Usually these novel viruses happen, you know, out there in the fringe, in the jungle. It's the farmers. You know, most outbreaks begin that way and then move into the city after that. But here they're like right away, oh, it's like, you know, some kind of exotic animal like the movie Outbreak. And they got this lab like right in the city. And, you know, the location that this was deployed, you know, makes it seem strategic. Right in the heart of the country, in a major city, things that you would never see before. And so I think there's every reason to entertain the possibility that this, you know, wasn't some kind of just normal evolution. Now, the Wuhan medical council is calling this virus SARI. It is very much like the SARS virus, but with a different incubation period. They say a longer incubation period and more contagious, which is really kind of like a nightmare SARS kind of scenario. And here's like an image of like, you know, the roads, all the back roads are being like, you know, basically barricaded. It's like a movie. And so people can be like, oh, well, you know, this is just a bunch of propaganda. I mean, could be. I mean, this is, you know, as convincing as we've ever seen it, to say the least. But, you know, if we were to look at the situation just, you know, from a normal point of view, we could say that, you know, if they're going to this extent to barricade this entire area like this, you know, something terrible must be going on, and the, you know, the medical. There's a killer virus in your town. This is your new world now. The Wuhan super virus has escaped the bioweapons lab and is now ravaging the world. But we just don't know it yet. Ladies and gentlemen, the new reports about this virus are scary indeed. Incubation periods on average around 5 days, and it attacks like nothing they've seen before, an 85% attack rate. And that means that it's highly virulent, highly contagious. And the footage that we're getting, that we've seen from that region so far, is beyond description. Sounds like the video guy is on vacation. Now, we've been covering this for the past couple of days, and it's only getting worse. Authorities are saying that the virus is accelerating. And again, the footage that we're seeing is rather phenomenal. As predicted, the amount of footage coming out of that region has basically come to a standstill. But we're suspecting the worst. We've seen basically what looks like, the end of the world in these hospitals. Everybody is coughing, everybody's crying, and the situation on the street looks rather, precarious to say the least. You don't know what's really happening right now because there's a total blackout of information, and turned away, sent back home, and somebody will, look after them. But there's no telling what the real numbers are. And every day the numbers keep going up. And of course, right now, everybody's saying, it's okay. It's okay. We're waiting for the first domestic spread of this virus. They're looking at least 60 cases in America right now, 2 confirmed, 1 in Chicago, right in the middle of the country. Just like the deployment of this virus in the Far East. And there's just so much to cover when it comes to this particular situation. And it's like, where do you begin? Nobody's ever seen anything like this before. To kind of recap, all roads in and out of the province of Wuhan has just been totally shut down. Everybody's out there like, it's a science fiction movie. And, for the most part, for what we can see, people are accepting it. There is no choice. You can't imagine what it would look like if they started quarantining all of these cities in America, 40 million people, at least a dozen cities, and it'd be like an entire state being shut down, National Guard at the borders. Nobody can go in or out, total media blackout. And you're seeing videos like this, people in spacesuits and people dropping dead right there in broad daylight. Just this massive quarantine, this massive black hole of information. And you just have to wonder, ladies and gentlemen, what is going on right now out there, and how bad is it going to get? Again, this virus is extremely virulent. And, the fact that people, will start exhibiting symptoms after 5 days means that, the numbers can expand exponentially, literally overnight. And that's what we've seen so far, looking at the history of this virus. It started as the Wuhan pneumonia mid-December. By the end of December, they were saying it was an epidemic. And a couple of weeks later, it's gone worldwide. And they've just totally shut down, like an entire state over there. 5 million people have fled Wuhan at the height of the epidemic, and now every major city in China is experiencing an outbreak. It's a nightmare scenario, and this is just the beginning of the crisis. And right now people are looking at the news, and it's just bad news across the board for the most part. The mainstream media is trying to get people down or something. Why can't they report some happy news, ladies and gentlemen? Instead, people are just dropping dead in broad daylight. People are walking around in spacesuits. There's a killer virus in their town. This is their new world now, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, it's in many towns, in just about every city out there. And we've got quite a few maps just to kind of put this into perspective for you. But literally every major city right now is at the beginning of a major outbreak, and they've just locked everything down. And not only is the government, setting up roadblocks, but people in the villages are blocking the roads, and they're quarantining themselves, ladies and gentlemen. Undoubtedly, the video guys on vacation. How's everybody doing out there? Terrible news with Kobe Bryant. We're going to be looking at that, what happened, and the like. Very sad situation right now. It's nothing but bad news for the West Coast, and the West Coast is probably going to get hit the worst. Right now, there's 3 cases in America, 2 on the West Coast and 1 in Chicago, which theoretically spells bad news. And we won't theoretically be in the clear for nearly another 30 days. You know, this virus is kind of like hot embers blowing in the wind. And when it hits the right, pool of people, then it becomes like a forest fire in that town, and just embers are flying everywhere. But the videos that we're getting from over there are, like Resident Evil, like the movie I Am Legend, to say the least. And now all of the information has been cut off. There's absolutely nothing coming through from normal people in there. And what has come through in the past couple days has pretty much been cries for help. Hundreds of thousands of people infected, not enough supplies, everything's breaking down. And people are talking about how, just to get online to the American internet, I mean, they have to go through proxies, and it looks like all of that has been shut down. And there's really no new information other than what we can see, which is that there's a major outbreak happening in every town out there, ladies and gentlemen. And it's spinning off, spiraling out of control. And we're getting new cases in Europe right now, as well as the Middle East. I mean, this thing is just showing up everywhere. And this is just really kind of like the beginning of the show. And you have to wonder, did this all come from the same lab, or are they just spraying it randomly out there? How would you know? How would you know if there's multiple sources? I mean, this is pretty much, the New World Order telling everybody to quit asking questions, isn't it? Or is it one of the biblical plagues in the book of Revelation? Is this the first one? And so you just have to wonder what's going on. And we'll have to see, who gets hit the hardest here, and what can we say about this in a spiritual context. Now, this probably isn't the time to be asking those kind of questions, or maybe it is. Maybe it's exactly at this kind of point in human history that we should be asking the questions: how did we get here? What happened? How did we go from the happy days to Leave It to Beaver, the golden era, if you will, to what is going on out there today? Have you ever asked yourself that question, especially ever since 9/11? Why is it that all the people on TV look like demons out there, product placing the demonic 24/7? Why is that? Where's the video guy? We're trying to get into contact with the video guy, but it's very difficult to hack the matrix these days. Not even, people on the western side of the wall, if you will, are able to successfully broadcast. It's very difficult these days. We were having some technical issues. They wanted everything, all the credentials re-entered and the like. It literally is hacking the matrix. Now, during this series, during this crisis, we've also talked about the problem with these death hours, which is attacking the immune system. I mean, there's been scientific research for decades on the effects of EMF and white blood cells, T cells, the immune system at large. And this Wuhan virus has become a weapon of mass destruction. It's like nothing anyone has ever seen before. It's as if it escaped from a lab, and that's exactly the way the Chinese are treating the current situation. They've closed off just about every road, shut down every major city, every theme park, every public event. What does this mean if this virus has escaped from a lab, if this virus has been weaponized? As a biologist, I can imagine all the little tweaks that could be done to make this virus even more virulent. And if even just some of these ideas have occurred, that means that there is no containment policy that they can put in place to stop this virus. It will survive. It will grow, in ways you can't even imagine. It'll stay on surfaces for days, spread before symptoms, mutate quickly, turn just about anyone into a super spreader. And, it may even go dormant and come back We've seen this virus spread into every major city in China in just a few days, around the world in a few weeks. Right now, it's spreading at a faster pace than SARS. SARS in 2003 infected 8,000 people in about a year. Wuhan has done 3,000 people in a week, according to the official reports, and over 100,000 people, according to the medics, the doctors on the ground. What does that tell you? Imagine, this virus being so contagious that it'll spread no matter what you do. And these cases that are showing up right now across the world seem innocuous, seem like it's no big deal, but this is just the beginning of the end. And we're seeing quite a few suspected cases already in strategic locations, and it's only going to take it a matter of weeks to spread from here, ladies and gentlemen. If this is a weaponized virus, now perhaps this is a dry run. Look at this map. I mean, you see the spread already. Every major city shut down, locked down, infections, deaths, outbreaks, you name it. It's like a horror movie out there, ladies and gentlemen. This is what they're looking at. This is their new world now, ladies and gentlemen. And, this graph we'll probably get back to later shows, the extent of the SARS outbreak. And it peaked over there at March with, was 100 new cases a day. So, but a very similar pattern. We'll get back into that, as well as the virus models, which are very ugly, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, this is the weapons lab, and this is where people are now, and it's coming your way. We got new footage here of more people just dropping dead right in the middle of their workday, if you will. It's not like anything anyone has seen before. The whole thing is so strange and unusual. You just can't imagine it not coming from a weapons lab, if you know what I mean, ladies and gentlemen. And that means that what's happening right now is just like the first stage of what's coming. And people are just kind of like relaxed and just thinking, oh, it'll be okay. It'll be like Ebola. This is some kind of psyop. This is some kind of test. This is just some kind of, a ploy to get people to take the flu vaccine or some other new vaccine. And I think all possibilities, are on the table. Nobody's ruling anything out at this stage. But, it looks super bad out there. And right now we've seen, just about every media outlet just kind of like, focus on something else. And they're just, basically allowing this to spread, allowing, more people to come on in. We've seen, plane loads of people still today arrive from a country where every major city is on fire. People are dressed like like it's the apocalypse. You got people in spacesuits and the like, and there's all these triage centers. You just couldn't imagine it being more Hollywood than right now. And these people are just kind of like flying in like it's no big deal, or like they've escaped. And that's exactly what we're seeing. Millions of people trying to escape, ground zero of Resident Evil. I mean, you'd do the same. You can't imagine the ripples right now, that are happening, expanding away from this event. And they're pretty much coming here. They're hitting the West Coast. We got, a ton of suspected cases already, people that have been to Wuhan. And, just looking at the situation, it seems like anybody that just stepped foot in that city got infected, and then they've become super spreaders. And there's just no way they would have gone to this length to stop, just some kind of, normal SARS for 800 people, or, 10,000 infections. You know what I mean? That's how many people were killed in the 2003 outbreak. You think they're going to shut down Disneyland for 800 people? You think they're going to shut down everything, all the roads? I mean, just basically start digging trenches and the like for 800 people, I think there's a high probability here that we're looking at something, completely evil that has escaped, and nobody dares, call it out for what it is. And they've got the genotype of this thing. I'm sure they're testing it right now just to see how bad it is. We just got our first few batches, and if it does take 14 days, I mean, nobody's going to know anything for like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, but, looking at the dead bodies piling up over there, and the situation is like, well, do you really want to take that risk? And they'll do anything for their economy. I mean, they'll frack you, they'll spray you, they'll pollute you, anything. They'll send your ass into the coal mine, pardon my language there, so that their stock price will go up. And they don't really care about the little people or anything like that. And so they'll keep the economy going the way it's going, and hedge and hope that this thing just doesn't become anything. And they're more concerned about greed than they are about public safety. And I think that's a matter of fact. Most people would agree that the situation right now is looking fairly nefarious, even without this super virus on the horizon. I mean, with all these death towers out there, ladies and gentlemen, who wouldn't be a little suspicious about what's going on? And the 5G is just part of the equation, the Agenda 21, the Georgia Guidestones, the termination of humanity as they... The Wuhan supervirus has begun to spread person to person in Germany, Japan, and Vietnam. New cases in France and the UK are spooking experts, and so far, the U.S. has not been able to clear over 100 suspected cases. It's important to remember that this virus has been weaponized. It's a weaponized super virus, and it's got a 3-week head start on everybody, ladies and gentlemen. What does that mean? We're going to get into all of that and much more. We're broadcasting live on the ScrewTube right now. This is Stranger Than Fiction News, and the situation has gotten much worse out there, to say the least. We're going to be getting into this new person-to-person spread in Germany. This is probably the most concerning news for the Western world. We're getting similar reports from Japan and Vietnam, and the cases are exploding right now. Germany has just announced 3 new confirmed cases. 1 earlier today. Now we got 4 there. There's a new case in France, a very concerning case because that person was certainly highly contagious and is on life support right now. There's a new case in the UK as well. Of course, the UK health officials just 2 days ago came forward and pleaded with the thousands of people that had returned from Wuhan and asked them to go into self-isolation. A little late, wouldn't you say? And that's the problem with a virus like this, a weaponized virus like this, having a 3-week head start on everybody. It's bad news, to say the least. And, again, the images that we're getting from over there are rather concerning. Lots of videos of people just dropping dead in broad daylight. And it's like nothing anyone has ever seen before. And of course, in the past few broadcasts, we've talked about the numbers, we've talked about, the situation, and it's just not looking good. I mean, if this is a weaponized strain that has gone through some kind of gain of function, research, then this thing is built to work around containment policies. And whatever, we might deploy as standard procedure is just not going to work, and the numbers are going to explode. And it's very likely right now that the first wave has begun, and it's camouflaged behind the seasonal flu. So most people will just think that they have the flu when in fact they've become a carrier for this virus, and we're getting all sorts of new disturbing details about this particular strain. Can have a very long incubation period, up to 14 days. People aren't going to be necessarily showing symptoms when they're carriers, and they're going to be contagious before symptoms show up. So this has become a worst case kind of scenario. And obviously it's, it's deadly enough that people are just dropping dead in broad daylight. And, right now health officials are rather reassuring, saying that, well, it's only got a 2 or 3% fatality rate. The SARS epidemic started that way as well, with only about 2 or 3%, and as it evolved, it went all the way up to 17% in Hong Kong, which is nearly 1 in 5 people dropping dead, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, the video guy is at it again. And again, video after video just shows you how disturbing this virus is. The big news right now is the person-to-person spread has begun in at least 3 different countries on 2 different continents, if you will. And so right now, Europe is basically quaking in its boots because there's numerous cities that have the virus right now being reported by the mainstream news, and now person-to-person spread has begun, which is kind of a proof of concept that, there's enough viral load with these people coming in to start spreading it around like the flu. And, what a flu it is, a weaponized flu. Happy New Year 2020. It's starting off pretty crazy out there. Big 7.7 quake right off the coast of Miami. And we got the Kobe Bryant story. Of course, who can forget about the historical impeachment that's happening right now? Anybody remember that one, ladies and gentlemen? And, it's just the start of a crazy year, to say the least. And we're going to get a new video guy, ladies and gentlemen, one of these days. But until we do, you're all kind of stuck with them. In any case, ladies and gentlemen, we've been talking about this coronavirus as well as the DEV666 virus. That's not getting a whole lot of media attention, so we want to bring it to your attention. And this is a virus that basically body snatches a person, ladies and gentlemen, and starts to take control of their mind like toxoplasmosis, a parasite that feeds off of its host and begins to exhibit control on the victim's behavior. This is scientifically proven. And, looking at the videos out there of this virus outbreak in Asia, the Wuhan virus, it looks like people are trying to escape containment and infect other people. We've got quite a few disturbing videos of that nature that we're going to show you, ladies and gentlemen. But the DEV666 virus is another one to look out for. We'll be talking about that coming up here pretty soon. But if you're just joining us, big breaking news: the Wuhan supervirus, a weapon of mass destruction, is now spreading person to person in Europe. We've got 4 brand new cases in Germany today, 1 brand new case in France, and they're looking at many more highly probable cases. But we've got the first person to person transmission. That means, the person was never in China, never in Wuhan, but did come into contact with somebody who was there. Imagine that you're on the Love Boat on your way to Rome when suddenly the captain comes on air and says, "Beware, the Wuhan virus is here, and the ship has been quarantined." What a nightmare scenario. Plenty of nightmare scenarios with this particular coronavirus, ladies and gentlemen, and it's spreading quickly around the world. And we've got all sorts of interesting information when it comes to this coronavirus. The New England Journal of Medicine has just released their first case study of about 400 cases about incubation period and the like. We'll be getting into that. We'll be getting into the comparison of this coronavirus and SARS. Very similar indeed, ladies and gentlemen. How's everybody doing out there? We're broadcasting live on the ScrewTube, covering the latest on the coronavirus because nobody really wants to talk about it. Don't talk about this virus. It'll just end up being like Ebola. It'll just end up being like something that we've seen before. But this definitely has the potential of doing quite a bit of damage, being the next Spanish flu. Seems like the Spanish flu had a very similar kill rate, about 2 or 3%. Right now we're seeing cases show up around the world, very disturbing cases from France and Germany. Not a whole lot of talk from U.S. officials as far as the suspected cases. We'll be getting into that. What is the true nature of what's going on? Ladies and gentlemen. Oh, the video guy. But it seems like, the whole system is beginning to buckle. And the outbreak hasn't even really started yet. And you'd be surprised how quickly things, become a nightmare scenario out there. Just apply a little pressure and the whole system starts crumbling. We'll get into that as well as some of the latest figures. Of course, the numbers have gone up. We're well above 7,000 cases now. It's totally blown away the SARS epidemic. That lasted a whole year, and in just a few weeks, they've blown right past through that, ladies and gentlemen. Any case, we're just hanging out on the ScrewTube channel. Want to say hi to everybody out there. Philip James, what's going on? Johnny Favorite, Scrappy D, Ben Parker. How's everybody doing out there? Where shall we begin? This is really just kind of like the warm-up to the main broadcast for the day. Of course, we broadcast once a day on various topics. And, that may include the cell towers. It may include the vaccines, the fluoride. We tend to focus on the eugenics programs, Agenda 21, Georgia Guidestones, because these people are seriously out to get you. And I think, they're liking the whole virus thing because it's like flushing out the system. It's like a rinse of society, takes out all the weak people that might actually try and cash in on, Medicare, Medicaid, all of that stuff. The insurance companies love these viruses because, it means more money for them, ladies and gentlemen. But this outbreak is very much like doing laundry by hand. How many people have done laundry by hand? You just kind of like turn on the faucet and just watch the water stream and start soaking into the clothes little by little. That's kind of like what an outbreak is like, we should say. And, in China, it's definitely started to overflow, and now we're starting to see cases around the world. We're looking at 2 very disturbing cases in France and Germany. It'll be a few days before we find out exactly what's going on over there. But according to the New England Journal of Medicine, we're looking at an incubation period on average about 4 or 5 days. You can check that out on our website, stfnreport.com. We upload, post articles throughout the day. But their case study is really interesting. They studied 400 of the first cases, and they were tracking a 4 or 5 day incubation period before symptoms began. And it's definitely worse for people above 50 years old. So, there's a lot of demographics that we could cover. I think we'll just refer you back to the New England Journal of Medicine. A lot of things to say. Australia has reported its 8th case, and some of the info out there is pretty disturbing as well. Seems like some patients were on planes full of people, and there was like a full dispersal. Right now we're looking at the cruise ship full of coronavirus. Imagine being on the Love Boat on your way to Rome, and here comes the captain, says, we got a couple passengers from Wuhan here, and they're showing symptoms. What kind of symptoms are we talking about, ladies and gentlemen? Have you been watching the news? You know, the images that are coming from over there are rather disturbing. I mean, people are just dropping dead. You know, what kind of virus is this? They say, oh, well, the flu kills more people, which is perhaps very true. But you don't see the flu doing anything like this, and people are going kind of crazy over there. We're getting lots of reports of, you know, supplies being, you know, hard to come by. People are waiting all day just for a mask or some kind of hand sanitizer. All sorts of stories of, like, you know, of pain and suffering, really. People being barricaded in, people being stuck on planes, stuck on cruise ships, you know, doctors and nurses over there working 24-hour shifts and the like, sleeping in their clothes, you know, on the floor. There's all sorts of riots and civil disturbances that aren't being reported right now. You know, as these towns and cities try to close their doors to the outside world, you know, people are rioting. There's all sorts of issues with, you know, first responders being able to come in, et cetera, et cetera. Life is pretty much ground to a halt. Nobody's even trying to add up the bill just yet. But, you know, this is going to cost, you know, the world economy, you know, quite a few percentage points, to say the least. But it must be worth it. The question is, what would drive the Chinese to shut down their entire society? I mean, they're all about the business, ladies and gentlemen. They're all about the Benjamins, you know what I mean? And they just shut everything down, including Disneyland, you know, and you see everybody out there with, like, the Outbreak suits. People are dropping dead. What is this virus? If you didn't know better, you'd say it escaped a lab, you know, and the mainstream press has actually said, well, yeah, there's, like, weapons labs in Wuhan, the only ones in the country, pretty much, right there. And it just happened to be released, you know, a few miles from there. Now, what's really interesting, just thinking about it, going back to the New England Journal of Medicine report, you know, in the text, they state that this all kind of started from the seafood market. They're all propagating that narrative. But if you look at the diagrams, you know, they separate cases that were from that seafood market versus cases that were not attributed to that seafood market. And the first blips on the radar are cases not linked to the seafood market. So you have to wonder if there is a secondary infection there to kind of cover up the source, or, you know, what's going on. But, you know, you can't exclude deployment in a food market or any other kind of crowded place at this stage, to say the least. If you're just joining us, huge cruise ship, 7,000 people on the Love Boat, stuck outside of Rome. It's turning into, you know, a very nightmarish vacation for many people out there. We've got some details about that particular case, if we can find the graphic there. Probably not. Not on this stage. Okay, video guy. We need a new video guy. Anybody out there got skills? It's getting serious out there, ladies and gentlemen. Any case, as far as these suspected travelers from the infected area, and, you know, how infected must it be for these cases to be spiraling around the world? How many potential cases are there? How many people are traveling from China per day? Figures are as high as 1.5 million people, ladies and gentlemen, with reports of 5 million people fleeing Wuhan at the height of the epidemic. I mean, there's just, you know, it's like the worst case scenario, basically. And it's always like that. Surprise, surprise, you know, after, you know, the genie is out of the bottle. Anyways, on the 25th of January, and we're seeing a lot of cases tied between, you know, the 19th and 25th. That's kind of like the first wave of infections that are making the news. But every 4 or 5 days, you get another wave until it crescendos and flares up into, you know, people showing up at the hospital and deaths and like. But right now we're seeing, you know, little waves, little ripples in the ponds begin. First, you know, group A, say from the 19th to the 25th. Those are the cases that we're seeing online right now. And, you know, a second wave is about to strike. And it'll probably take at least 10 subsequent waves for it to flare up. That's basically what we saw in China, the very first month, there were, just a few cases, and all of a sudden it was the big bang, if you will. But here, 25th arrived in Italy, and then on the ship. And so they've been on the ship for like 5 days. Everybody's probably contaminated on that ship, chances are. So now you got 7,000 people, basically in quarantine until tests can, provide further information, which could be another 2 days. But chances are we're dealing with something rather spectacular there. We talked about the case in Germany, which is outside of Munich, the other day. And that was the first human-to-human propagation in Europe. It wasn't domestic to domestic, so it's kind of like the bridge before sustained infections can occur. But that seemed to have infected a whole workplace. And that's certainly, what you don't want to see. And then there's the Paris incident, which is making the news, which is really what you don't want to see. You got one guy going into the emergency room and sitting there, and usually you got to sit in the emergency room for an hour or two at least, coughing everywhere before anybody helps you. But finally they got that guy into a room, but they didn't identify him as an actual Wuhan case for at least another 24 hours after that. And so people were treating that case with really only, some of the safety measures. What we know from SARS cases is that, if a patient like that walks into an emergency room and is treated in a hospital, even if they're wearing masks and the like, most of them will be infected. This stuff, this virus requires something more than masks. And that's been, well recorded in numerous case studies and scientific journals and reports. So given the lag time and the high probability of cross-infection there, we're probably looking at a patient zero, if you will. And there were reports on French television that one of the medics or nurses has already shown symptoms. We cannot confirm that. But at this stage right now, everybody's looking at this hospital, Georges Pompidou in Paris, like, what happened. But it's certainly a lesson, and in outbreaks, there are many lessons to be learned. And this virus seems much more virulent than SARS. Already it's blown through those numbers considerably. To say the least. And now we're starting to see the ripple effects, the domino effects. And each one of these people coming in from, that ground zero is a potential of, has the potential of infecting, millions of people, if they land in the right spot. And they're all landing in the right spot. And I'm sure there's a lot of people probably looking at this, higher up, if you will, in the government, like, what's going on? Is this some sort of biological attack? I mean, that's what it looks like, ladies and gentlemen, to say the least. This looks like a bioweapon. And we're not hearing much about the cases in America. Everybody seems to think A-OK. What we do know is that when they evacuated the 200 people from Wuhan just recently, flew them through Alaska and then on to California, instead of just landing them in Ontario, as originally planned, they diverted them to a military base, and they've quarantined them there. So, I mean, they're obviously taking this situation very seriously, much more so. I mean, everybody's taking this much more seriously than the flu, even though the flu.
And then admission into a hospital, treatment, and then eventually either recovering or perishing from this infection. Given that lag, we used our methods, which we described to you the last time, to try and infer how many cases there actually are or were as of 2 days ago in Wuhan. Given the lag between infection, incubation, symptom onset, and then admission into a hospital, treatment, and then eventually either recovering or perishing from this infection, Given that lag, we used our methods, which we described to you the last time, to try and infer how many cases there actually are or were as of 2 days ago in Wuhan.
How deadly is this virus? We're beginning to find out, ladies and gentlemen, but right now they're reporting 200 people dead. Now, if you know the incubation and the evolution of this disease, it takes about 10 days after infection, 7 days after being confirmed as a case to be killed off by this super virus. And right now, if we look back in time where we were a week ago, there were 1,000 cases. 200 dead for 1,000 cases a week ago is the true number of this epidemic, ladies and gentlemen, and that means the kill rate is literally at 20%. We've got quite a few graphs to look at, plus new videos that are really disturbing. Dead bodies everywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be getting into that and the rest of the news. But new countries are reporting. Italy is in a state of emergency after 2 cases in Rome. The UK reported their first cases as well, ladies and gentlemen. And, those people obviously were staying at a hotel. They're trying to track down everybody at that hotel. It's becoming a nightmare. It's becoming like a Robin Cook novel. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not sure how many people have read any of those novels, but rather disturbing to say the least.
Given the lag between infection, incubation, symptom onset, and then admission into a hospital, treatment, and then eventually either recovering or perishing from this infection.
There's about a 10-day lag between infection and acute respiratory distress, according to the medical journals. And we're looking at numbers right now, 200 dead, which represent, cases that were confirmed a week ago. And again, we're seeing quite a few new videos of dead bodies everywhere, littering the streets. We don't know how many people have actually been killed by this virus, but we've got a very interesting graphic, a graphic that should send everybody to, the shopping center to grab what they can as soon as we can find it, thanks to the video guy. Ladies and gentlemen, where did the video guy go? But we've got a very disturbing graphic that we're prepared to show you, to unveil here, that is going to blow you away. Here it comes. On the left-hand side, you can see the comparison between SARS and the Wuhan strain. This isn't a joke. As you can see, the Wuhan strain has gone completely vertical compared to SARS on the timeline. And you may have to blow this up, you may have to hit pause, you may have to look at it for yourself, but this strain is much more aggressive and as deadly as SARS as far as we can tell right now. Again, dead bodies everywhere out there, total media blackout. And you know that the government knows how bad the situation is. They're just not letting anybody, explore that information in detail. There's pretty much been a total shutdown of questions and answers with any type of panel of, doctors and the like. And they've just maintained complete radio silence for the most part, just coming on TV every once in a while saying, we got a new case, we got a new case. Early on in the Wuhan epidemic, there were hardly any cases reported in the first month. Obviously, we didn't really hear much about it. China reported around the end of the year its first 40 cases. 20 days after that was the lockdown. And now, we're up at 10,000 cases, and it's probably at 100,000 cases. Every major city in China has been affected. Every region, province has cases. Every neighboring country has cases. And, seeds have spread around the world. And so, this is going to get much, much worse before it gets any better. The question is, will these seeds spark sustained epidemics in other cities is the next big question. But as far as what is the true death rate from this virus, ladies and gentlemen, right now they're reporting 200 deaths from Wuhan strain. But again, clinically speaking, it takes about 10 days after infection or about 7 days after being confirmed as a case, and perhaps even longer. I mean, this is a very conservative estimate, 20%. It could be much, much higher. When you look at the videos, the new videos especially, where, I mean, there's just people dropping dead everywhere. You know, and then basically, you know, the garbage men come in their white suits and just take away the bodies, and then they try to, you know, ban any videos showing these incidents. We're hearing that everybody that's basically posting these types of videos from over there is facing 7 years in prison. That's no joke, ladies and gentlemen. But we're seeing, you know, just a sample of what's going on in daily life over there. We got at least 5 major metropolitan areas in China that are heavily infected. Beijing, Shanghai, Wuhan, and, you know, other epidemics are breaking out right now, not only in China, but neighboring countries. We're starting to see, you know, some countries report over 10 cases, which is certainly a threshold. And the like. We're also getting, you know, the first reports of human-to-human transmission in other countries, including America, France, Germany, Vietnam, just to name a few. And we're certainly going to hear more about this, to say the least. The UK is on the hunt for, you know, untold numbers of guests at a hotel. Italy has declared a state of emergency. You're starting to see people wear masks now in Europe. We've certainly crossed a threshold there. The question is, what's really happening in America? We've seen over 100 suspected cases. We're at 6 confirmed cases right now. And you just have to respiratory syndrome. They should be calling this, you know, drop dead syndrome, because people are literally dropping dead. And people can say whatever they want to say, but the little videos that have been able to basically escape or leak the, you know, their internet, you know, should give everybody cause for concern. And as you can see, you know, many countries are just stopping air travel completely to China. That's something that we didn't see during the Ebola outbreak. People were, you know, saying, hey, they should stop, you know, the air traffic, especially when that first case came through, but they never did. Here, I mean, just about every country has stopped traffic, direct flights to China and the like. And, you know, looking at the way the authorities over there have treated the case, which is basically to shut down everyone, lock everything down. I mean, it's like it escaped a lab, ladies and gentlemen. Now, yesterday we talked about the clinical publications discussing, you know, the onset of symptoms, the time delay between the onset of symptoms and basically intensive care. And it's, you know, on average 7 to 10 days after the onset, and then the onset usually begins 2 to 3 days, perhaps 4 days after infection. And there's a lot of speculation as far as when people are being contagious. We're seeing a wide spectrum of cases as far as being contagious, showing symptoms at what time, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's, you know, it's really unimaginable to see all of these functions, you know, in a given virus. I mean, it's like this is a super virus. It's been engineered in a lab to spread, which means that it will undoubtedly, you know, work around conventional containment measures, perhaps and including, you know, full lockdown. We're going to see, you know, what happens in terms of sustained infections out there. But the videos are quite clear, especially the new ones. I mean, the bodies are just, you know, dropping to the floor, ladies and gentlemen, and video after video. And, you know, we've probably got videos of at least, you know, 30 or 40 people, and this is just a small sample. You know, there must be, you know, so many more cases. And it just looks like, you know, they're just quickly coming by to, you know, pick up the bodies and, you know, pretend like nothing is going on. We're obviously getting some real, you know, distressful reports from within the quarantine zone. Everything has become a ghost town, just dead bodies hanging around, and supply. Breaking news. Countless people have been killed by this Wuhan super virus. According to the mainstream news, people working at cremation centers in Wuhan are saying bodies are being sent directly from hospitals without being properly identified or without being added to the official records. With all of the videos of dead bodies showing up right now, ladies and gentlemen, you can understand why they're burning these bodies, why they've locked down their entire, country, all the cities closed for business. This should shock everyone. And what we're about to reveal in this broadcast will give you better insight on what is actually going on. First and foremost, on the left-hand side here, you're looking at a comparison of the Sars virus outbreak versus the Wuhan virus outbreak. And as you can see, the Wuhan has gone completely vertical. We're also getting breaking news that 18 different school districts in Ohio have closed due to the flu, quote unquote. We're going to be following that story. 2 unconfirmed reports of coronavirus in Ohio. Now, they have tests that can rule out coronavirus that give results in 30 minutes. They've been sitting on 100 different cases for a week now. And we're going to be getting into what are they hiding and what is truly going on. But again, you see what's going on in China, and now supposedly they're burning bodies. You just have to wonder, how bad is it? On our website, stfnreport.com, we've just posted a couple of very important articles, and we're going to be getting into them. But one in particular, talking about this outbreak in Germany. And on the German front, right now, it's gone from 0 to cases basically overnight, ladies and gentlemen. And we're going to read this article, and then we're going to read a couple paragraphs of this article, and then we're going to tell you what this means. But here it goes. 5 employees, now 6, from a German auto parts supplier have been infected with the new coronavirus. So that's a massive outbreak of human-to-human transmission already. The cause of the massive pneumonia outbreak in China that the World Health Organization declared a global emergency yesterday. We could get into that. But don't worry about the video guy. He'll be back with us one of these days. In any case, continuing on with the articles. The infection appears to have been transmitted during the incubation period of the virus in a Shanghai that was in a Shanghai-based colleague. The woman attended meetings from January 19th to the 22nd near Munich with no signs or symptoms of infection, but she became unwell on her January 22nd flight back to China. She tested positive for the 2019 coronavirus 4 days later, doctors said in the New England Journal of Medicine on Thursday, which would have been yesterday. The cases show the difficulty of controlling the contagion using methods such as fever screening at airports. Almost 10,000 people across 20 countries have been confirmed, etc., etc. And let's see. The summary here is that in this case, what we find out is that carriers are highly contagious, even with no symptoms. And in this article, it goes on to say that the first German to get infected really only showed or only had like a sore throat and a cough for about 48 hours. He thought it was like the 48-hour flu, went back to work on Monday, felt just fine. And then other workers were starting to get sick. And when they tested him a few days after that, he still had the virus. He was still shedding the virus. And so it's quite possible, especially during this flu season, that people are running around out there with the case of the 48-hour flu, but in fact, they're carriers and spreading the coronavirus. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, if it's only a 48-hour flu, what's the big deal? And obviously, we're seeing the big deal in China because there's people, dropping dead everywhere, and everything is shut down. So while there's a wide spread of spectrums, this portion of the spectrum is very disturbing. It's like, the sleeper cell. It's like the sniper out there, but really it's a stealth super spreader. And there's no telling how many of the cases are like this, but in any case, the numbers must be huge. And this is why we're seeing, this huge outbreak, because many people don't even know that they're carriers, and they're spreading it around for days and days and days, maybe weeks. And there really needs to be, some studies on how long does the virus stay with the person? How long are they contagious? But this is a really huge revelation, because it means that there's really no way to stop this virus. Because breaking news, big evolution in the weaponized Wuhan supervirus case. So much information to cover right now. You're looking at video of at least 8 corpses being transported out of the Wuhan hospital. Many concerned citizens are now filming the situation. Numerous reports of body bags everywhere. We've got tons of footage of that, new footage, in fact, as well as the bombshell revelation that 4 different HIV-1 insertions have been decoded from the genome, and this has been confirmed by numerous peers in the scientific community. There is some differing opinions as far as why these insertions are there, but this has enhanced the infectability or the contagious factor of this virus by tenfold, if not more. We're broadcasting live right now on the ScrewTube. We're preparing all the talking points for the main broadcast that'll be showing up later today. Big shout out to everybody out there in the audience. There's really a lot of information to cover here, and it's like, where do you begin? Which virus, ladies and gentlemen? And which video, which example? We've got also new information on, oh man, the video guy. We've got new information on the epidemiology of this virus as far as what is being attacked. These videos where you're seeing people just drop dead are actually suffering a heart attack as a result of the infection. And this is now being discovered, as well as the attacks on the kidneys, renal function in general. Seems like a massive attack as far as when this virus invades. Again, there's just really so much information to wrap our minds around right now in terms of this virus, ladies and gentlemen. And we're going to be getting into all of that. We're just trying to isolate the best videos to describe what's coming, the new videos that we've seen, some very remarkable videos indeed. And it's just going to take its sweet time to get all of this done on live television. Of course, we've been experiencing quite a few different cyber attacks in the recent weeks, and it's making it more difficult to broadcast live, to say the least. In any case, just want to narrate some of these videos. It's a mass panic to get out of the big cities in China right now. They're reporting, lack of supplies and the like. We're also getting reports of untold numbers of bodies being disposed of in the crematoriums. This has been further corroborated by video evidence coming from Wuhan as we see them ship out the body bags. The Wuhan supervirus continues its rampage. This virus has every feature of a bioweapon, every feature that you would want. The victims become contagious in 2 to 3 days, and they remain contagious 14 days after they're infected. That means there's a quick ramp up when it comes to this style of epidemic. If in 2 or 3 days they become contagious, that means they're infecting people in 2 or 3 days. People are infecting people in 2 or 3 days, and those people are infecting to contaminate the next victims. And that means that authorities worldwide should be treating this like an out of control wildfire. And we've learned a lot about containing wildfires over the last decade or so. And if they could start backfires and the like, they certainly would. Now, we're getting interesting reports that doctors and hospitals are experimenting with their patients a little bit, and some have claimed that certain cocktails of HIV and antiviral influenza drugs have cured this disease. We're seeing reports similar nature from hospitals in America as well that have treated the first patients, and they're using novel antiviral drugs that are soon to come on the market. And we're seeing a lot of a lot of chatter about things already being on the market or just coming onto the market that are more or less made for this virus. I think a lot of people are going to be thinking about the Umbrella Corporation. They're going to be thinking about these mandated vaccines, and they're going to be wondering, if there's any connection. And there quite possibly could be, ladies and gentlemen, after the startling revelation yesterday that we have HIV spliced into this virus. Ladies and gentlemen, we're looking at the maps of the evolution of this outbreak. And day by day, we've been keeping tabs of, new cases and the like. And on day one, it was looking pretty nice. That's pretty much day one of the outbreak. It always starts with a couple cases out there. But the big news here, really, as far as understanding, where this epidemic is going, is that it's engineered for a quick ramp up. And, most of the people that are infected are, in fact, silent sleeper cells, if you will, showing, moderate symptoms at best, treating it as a cold. And that allows this bioweapon to hide behind the, fog of war, if you will, of the influenza season. And there's so many, pneumonias and flu-like symptoms this time of year that it's really hard to say, oh, well, this guy's got it for sure. But given how quickly this has spread, it's almost certainly, much further along than most people would suspect. And it's almost safer to presume that this is a bioweapon that's already started to replicate within our shores versus waiting for it to turn into another Wuhan, into another China, where, just all of a sudden now, the entire country is on lockdown. And of course, the video guy is at it again. We're broadcasting live on ScrewTube. How's everybody doing out there? And, the Chinese must be wondering whether or not they should nuke Wuhan right now. We don't know how deadly this virus is, and we don't know if these cases that they've miraculously cured wouldn't have been cured by themselves anyways. And it's not because they come on television and say, well, their antiviral drugs work, that it's going to work for everyone. But it certainly gives us hope out there, ladies and gentlemen. that they already have a vaccine, like the movie Outbreak. But will they nuke a city to stop this outbreak? How many countries right now are thinking about nuking, Wuhan and some of these, other cities perhaps that are heavily infected? And we're getting reports that, body bags are just being shipped off to the crematorium. These are local reports from numerous sources. And, you have to wonder if they're just not, starting to execute or planning to execute people that are showing symptoms to try and, derail this epidemic. And it may come down to that, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, right now they've done everything but that to try and stop the spread. And the question is, will anything stop this virus? Will anything stop this Wuhan super virus? And, countries out there which are heavily impacted are probably considering just about everything right now. And we'll just have to see, how far does it go. But the numbers right now are just blowing away the models that we saw in the early days that were estimating 250 million people killed worldwide. We displayed some of those models in the earlier broadcast, and we're way ahead of schedule. This thing is, much faster, spreading much faster than anybody would have anticipated. And I think that's, the least we can say about the situation right now, ladies and gentlemen. And, if you wanted to make a bioweapon, I mean, a must-have is a real short incubation period, as short as possible, as well as having, other possibilities. We'll get into that. But having a short incubation period of 2 or 3 days means that this thing can spread through a city in a matter of, days, a big city in a week, and infect just about everyone. Now, the blowback to a short incubation period is that it can burn out rather quickly. If you can isolate, an epidemic region, city, block, building, whatever, then it should burn out in a week or so. But, the problem here with this virus, here's the back door, is that people are contagious at least 14 days after the infection begins, even if they are released from the hospital and think they're cured. And this came out in the New England Journal of Medicine, still a very high viral load in the people that are cured. So they're still contagious. The question is, they might not be coughing and sneezing everywhere, but they can still shed the virus even in fecal clouds. And we're learning about this now. You might think that's ridiculous. But in fact, farts, ladies and gentlemen, spread this virus. The person next to you could just let one loose, and all of a sudden you have the Wuhan super virus. No kidding. Not only that, public restrooms, anytime you smell, the bathroom smells, those are fecal clouds, ladies and gentlemen, and they contain coronavirus. And this coronavirus kills. It's like the drop dead virus. We're seeing people drop dead from this virus like never before. How's everybody doing out there? You ready for the Super Bowl? People out there in China are ready for the Super Bowl. They're trying to make it to your Super Bowl party. Will you invite them over, ladies and gentlemen? But no joke, I mean, the weaponized Wuhan supervirus has arrived to the San Francisco area. It has arrived to the core of the beast system. It has arrived to the core of this dark matrix. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be getting into the latest information on the Wuhan crisis, the outbreak of 2020. Undoubtedly, it's going to be historic out there. This is Stranger Than Fiction News, broadcasting live on this ScrewTube Beast System network, hacking the Matrix, if you will. And it seems like reinforcements have arrived. The Wuhan supervirus is about to break out, unleash, go on a rampage out there on the West Coast. And many people right now are just kind of like pretending like everything's okay. You haven't seen the videos. You haven't seen the real videos. We were, watching the TV reports, the network reports on what's going on out there. Oh, it's just honky-dory. They're just showing you pictures of them building a new hospital, but they're not showing you all the people dropping dead. Countless videos. It's martial law out there. Everything's locked down. It's not honky-dory. Their stock market took a huge hit today, and who knows where this may lead, ladies and gentlemen. The whole beast system might collapse due to this Outbreak 2020. Did they see it coming? Did they release this outbreak? Or is there something else going on? You need to know, ladies and gentlemen, and they don't want you to know. That's how you know you need to know, because this mafia of a TV system and social media, this whole beast system doesn't want you to know the real dangers of the situation. And they're causing, they're calling everything, panic or fake news, but the video speaks for itself. We don't even have to narrate this. We could just play the video, clip after clip. And we've seen clip after clip, millions of views. We've just put them all together for you so that you can, get an idea of what's going on. And in the news today, they admitted that, in fact, now they're burning bodies. They're banning funerals. There's no telling, how many people have been killed. There's no telling what the true death rate is of this weapon of mass destruction. And we're getting reports that right now, ladies and gentlemen, it's like Minority Report out there. And people are having to line up to the windows as the drones come in to measure their temperature. We're also getting reports that medical staff are using trash bags as hazmat suits, if you will, and they're pleading for help. And as the world stocks go down in medical supplies, this outbreak is starting to spread. And you'd probably be surprised if you could actually get, a mask once it goes out of stock at your local pharmacy or wherever. They're not going to restock the gas mask or the face mask, the surgical masks, none of it. Get them while you can out there, ladies and gentlemen. Because when you look at how they're adapting to the situation out there, I mean, it's, masks 24/7, and everybody's trying to get out. That should tell you something is wrong. Everybody's trying to flee. And the fact that they're suppressing this information on the news is dangerous. It's dangerous. I haven't seen this level of lying and misrepresentation in the news business since, they went after Trump. It's the exact same thing. The way they're going after Trump over every little thing is the same way that they're treating this current situation. And now it's on our shores. And virologists, are looking at the rate of replication. How fast is this particular virus replicating? And we're seeing the cases just explode. And we're seeing the first journals, case studies in the medical journals as far as, what this virus really is. And so we're going to run through a couple models with you and kind of forecast the weather. We'll see how accurate these models tend to be, but the math is rather simple. And so we're just going to cover that with everybody out there live. How's everybody doing out there? Anybody out there? Like and share, mirror this content, get everybody over here. Let them know where we've landed. They're trying to, censor us once again. And everything, that we put up is coming along with restricted access kind of tags, You got to be 18, you got to sign in, we got to be able to track you. We got to know what you know all the time. We'll take a look at this. Projected cases per week based on rate of transmission. So in the range that we're looking at, most likely, is that this thing will have a R0 of 2, 3, or 4, which means that, one person will infect either 2 people on average, one person will infect 3 people on average, or one person will infect 4 people on average. And so you can almost look at this as magnitude, like, a magnitude 2 or a magnitude 3 hurricane, earthquake, outbreak. And so if we're looking at a magnitude 2 outbreak, in the first 4 weeks, which is like the blue, we're seeing basically, just a handful of cases. And, only 20% of those cases are going to be severe. And so they're going to show up to like the emergency room right now at the peak of flu season that's killing a lot of people and, causing a lot of pneumonia and the like anyways, right? So, to actually, for a physician to actually kind of translate, something significant in that kind of noise is going to be difficult. It's not going to be until these cases stand out in the crowd, like they're all wearing MAGA hats or something. It's not until all of these cases start standing out that, physicians are going to start running additional tests and the like, or the coronavirus kind of tests. And so, there's going to have to be a certain threshold that's crossed before, local hospitals are going to even understand what's happening. And right now, some hospitals, especially in the big cities where this is probably going to show up first, they're dealing with thousands of cases per week, just of the flu and pneumonia and the like. So you got to start thinking about the numbers. We're right now at week number 2. Week 2 is concluded. We think that the first seeds came blowing in mid-January. So we're now beginning of February. We're starting week 3. And essentially, we don't know exactly how many seeds have blown into the big cities, but, the numbers are rather large right now. We're talking, we could have between 500 and 2,000 people that have come into the country at the height of the epidemic, spread out across the country. So what we're going to see is, in fact, little flare-ups in every city. Most cities, before it starts expanding into, a mushroom cloud, if you will. And so, it's startling news, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen? How's everybody doing out there? Like and share, get everybody over here. This is Stranger Than Fiction News, broadcasting live. The weaponized Wuhan supervirus has arrived in Silicon Valley, Silicon Valley. The heart of the beast system, the core of the network, has been hacked with the Wuhan supervirus. It's going down. It's just begun, ladies and gentlemen, according to most models and forecasts at this stage. And right now, we're at the beginning of week 3 of the U.S. outbreak. And literally, it could be, week 4. We're going to have to be at least plus or minus a week, mid-January. The beginning of the outbreak. And they're just getting, the people that are willing to turn themselves into, ICE and the hospitals and the like. You can't imagine how many people, are hiding underneath the radar, and perhaps even some malicious people trying to super spread this, like we've seen in Asia. So this was the beginning of the crisis, and you could see, every day, each slide is a day, the numbers are expanding. It's going, it's going vertical. I think we've got another real disturbing graphic, comparing it to SARS. It's totally gone vertical. And the last reported days, we're seeing this outbreak continue to grow. And again, they're burning bodies. There's no funerals, no official records. You can't, you can't take the numbers that they're giving you as actual numbers at this stage, especially with their economy now just taking a huge, smack. They're going to be like, everything's fine, come to China. You know what I mean? And all the videos are just going to get shut down. They're going to hit the switch, and nothing is coming out. But what has come out over the past, few days, it's like body bags, dead people everywhere. And it's like a Resident Evil, nightmare, quite literally out there, ladies and gentlemen. And to see the news, like every channel, NBC, ABC, CBS, I mean, the only videos they show are like people getting scanned or them building a hospital. But they don't show you like any of the body bags. If they've shown you like one video since the beginning of this outbreak, that's pretty much it. And we've seen, countless people just drop dead right there. And, the reports from the locals are much worse than, just a few hundred people. I mean, even like on day one of the lockdown, it was like 100,000 people are infected, run for your lives, right? And, now we're hearing, the crematoriums are on full blast and they're just burning bodies and no funerals, no records, no idea what's going on. But this shit's coming to you and they're like, hey, enjoy the Super Bowl and all of that stuff. Think how many people got together over the weekend, at the bar, at the sports bar and whatever. Oh, huge super spreader events. I mean, this weekend, the Super Bowl weekend will be remembered as, a game changer in this outbreak. It's almost assured. And we were trying to, warn people, don't think that we're all just kind of like gloom and doom, Sodom and Gomorrah is getting what it deserves here, ladies and gentlemen. There'll be time for that. But, we were trying, the days before, as soon as we thought of it, like, oh shit, the Super Bowl is just going to make this so much worse. Well, that's when they started censoring. And seeing how they're playing this all down and they're like, hey, look the other way. I mean, these people are part of the setup. I have no doubt that this is going to be like another 9/11 where they stand down, they let all of this traffic in, and then they're like, oops, you better vote for me, we'll help you out, that kind of thing, problem, reaction, solution. They've got this thing planned out and mapped out, ladies and gentlemen. I have little doubt about that. And so what we're seeing now, it's all about the setup. I mean, these people couldn't be more disingenuous. They couldn't be more your enemy. It's as if, it's worse than if the Chinese or the Russians invaded together. What we got in this country right now, the pestilence, the viruses in DC right now and on TV is worse. They pretend like, oh, they're here to help you as they roll out the death towers and, enable the censorship. And they're like, yeah, we need your guns. Have a few little red flag laws, put on your little red hat, come vote for me, or it's Commie Sanders. What you gonna choose, ladies and gentlemen? I mean, if that's not a setup, you know what I mean? You always like the con man, but that's besides the point. This beast system is out to get you. They're poisoning the food, the air, the water. We've been telling you this for years, and now they're unleashing the fucking super virus. And what are people gonna do? These death towers are making the situation worse. Studies since the 1970s have proven that EMF attacks white blood cells, it suppresses the immune system and the like. You've heard about the leukemia and the high-powered transmission lines. Well, it's the same thing, but in Wi-Fi. You know what I mean? And so these death towers, this Wi-Fi, it makes everything worse. Even the common cold is, much more of a killer than it ever used to be. And this is, perfect for them because people just write it off like they got the flu. It's funny. People call it the flu. They don't even know what it is. They're like, it's the flu. What does that mean? What's the flu? Tell me what you think the flu means. Most people think they catch the cold because they're outside in the cold. You're still dealing with a lot of people like that. You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised what you find out there, in sheeple land. And look, I mean, people have no idea what's coming their way, but looking at the Chinese, they're like, they're acting like this thing escaped a lab. I mean, you couldn't script this better for a Hollywood movie if no matter what you did. You know what I mean? And it's like they've just shut everything down, roadblocks everywhere. Don't come outside. The drones are going to scan you, all that kind of stuff. Everybody's got to have a mask on. That's your new world now. What are you going to do then? Go take a selfie with your mask on? Look at me. So, yeah, this is obviously going to be, a developing nightmare. But in the meantime, right now, this thing is just, landed in Silicon Valley, not far from Facebook headquarters, not far from Google headquarters. And you can bet it's these people from Hollywood that have brought this disease to our shores. They brought us AIDS back in the 80s, and now they're bringing us the Wuhan with their new world order. And, they've just plugged everything in so nice so that something like this can happen and it just burns like wildfire. This could have happened in any major city, any lab. And all of a sudden, boom, it's like around the world like Fukushima in 24 hours. And what you going to do? And the TV's like, oh, here, come check out Sideshow Bob and The Simpsons and all that shit. You know, they'll always, you know, put on a show on the television. It's nothing but a distraction. It's nothing but, you know, a control mechanism when you think about it. It's all about control. And as soon as you start, you know, breaking through, it's like they live. All of a sudden, you know, they're just shutting everything down and you got to hack, you know, the matrix. Free speech is gone in America. It's a tragedy that we had to see this during our generation. You know, the generation where, you know, people watched America get murdered, no free speech, no privacy, everything's fucking gone. It's like, you know, Big Brother everywhere, and now they're releasing Resident Evil, you know, and it's blowing right back into their, you know, community. You thought it was bad already looking at, you know, all the homeless people and the situation. And these drones are now like spraying people. You thought the chemtrails are bad. Now the drone is coming at you.
The spread of this. I think we're going to start to see secondary spread in the United States in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
And then what?
And then it's going to be a difficult month. I think people are going to start to shut down, you know, certain activity to try to curtail the spread of this. I think we're going to start to see secondary spread in the United States in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
And then what?
And then it's going to be a difficult month. I think people are going to start to shut down, you know, certain activity to try to curtail the spread of this. I think the next 2 weeks are pivotal. We don't start to see outbreaks in the United States within the next 2 or 3 weeks. We might have dodged the bullet here. I think we're going to start to see secondary spread in the United States in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
And then what?
And then it's going to be a difficult month. I think people are going to start to shut down, you know, certain activity to try to curtail the spread of this.
Former FDA commissioner and now a CNBC contributor who is also a member of Pfizer's board, Dr. Gottlieb.
There's probably tens, if not hundreds of thousands of cases in China. I think we're going to have outbreaks here in the U.S. We need to start preparing for that. To avert an epidemic, we need to do better diagnostic screening.
Not vaccines. Yeah.
And right now, the diagnostic test we have requires samples to be sent off. It takes a number of days to get a positive result back. What you really need is a point-of-care diagnostic that allows you to screen people out quickly. And if people, you know, have presumptive infection, isolate them.
Can I just ask, do we know anything about the incubation? I've heard anywhere from 1 to 14 days.
Yeah, you know, it looks like it's about a week. So you've seen a range of 2 to 10 days in some of the more recent analysis. Some people say up to 2 weeks, but I think a rule of thumb should be it's about a week. That's typical of a coronavirus. So that's what we should be working from right now.
Basically, as a well, I want to ask you, as a former FDA commissioner, would it be irresponsible of you to give an actual estimate of what you think the actual cases are, or just say that you probably are underestimating by a factor of what?
Well, I think it's dramatically underestimated based on everything.
Dramatically a factor of what?
Tens of thousands. And, you know, there's some analyses coming out that said that there may be as many as 300,000 cases in China right now.
And we're talking about 4,000.
I think we're going to start to see
official number versus,
right. Also remember, they only rolled diagnostics out to most of the healthcare facilities in late January. So there's a whole bunch of cases they didn't even test. So there must be people who passed away from viral-like pneumonia that weren't even tested that we'll never capture. You know, if you put it in perspective in terms of the reporting that we have right now, we know the numerator, we don't know the denominator. So it does suggest that maybe it's less virulent than you would suppose based on the statistics that we have. That doesn't make it any less concerning.
When you look at the steps that they're taking, do you say this is an overreaction, complete underreaction?
Well, the problem is we don't know what they're really looking at. I think the Chinese haven't been forthcoming with information, so we've been patting them on the back for being good actors in this case because they're behaving better than they did with SARS. They're still not behaving well. They've concealed key information, including that this was spraying the healthcare workers, which they didn't admit to last week. So we don't really know the full scope of what they're facing. And it's going to be a difficult month. I suppose that they're facing a very large epidemic and they're taking pretty draconian measures. Some of these are not going to work. The quarantines might not be effective.
0.0002 or whatever the influenza virus is in terms of mortality can add up to hundreds of thousands. If this is really 2%, which sounds okay, that's a big number.
Well, even if this is 0.5%.
If it's 0.5, and I don't know what, do you have a feel for what it might be? What was SARS? Was SARS really 7?
About 10, yeah.
10.
Oh, I thought it was 7.
Higher in healthcare workers. Spread of this. But I think we're going to start to see secondary spread in the United States. This does look like it could potentially be in that sort of middle ground between something that's contagious enough to spread very efficiently, but still severe enough to cause a lot of harm.
You were with us.
And then what?
And then it's going to be a difficult month. I think people are going to start to shut down, you know, certain activity to try to curtail the spread.